Well, that's probably true. I mean, cross country is more about just endurance and managing your own like oxygen levels and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
You know, like how do I get from point A to point B the fastest, managing how fast I have to run at different points in time relative to controlling my breathing and all that garbage, right?
Yeah.
Where ultimate frisbee, you're like diving, and do you tackle an ultimate frisbee?
You're not supposed to.
New England Patriots club ultimate frisbee team. They actually sharpen the edges of the frisbee. All right. So, what is a closure? Okay. So specifically, it's like passing a function to as a parameter to another function, right? So I probably referenced it last class. Is for you 470 guys, it's like our lambda expressions. So it's a situation where we can actually pass as a parameter into another function, a function to operate on. So we used one last time. So here's our closure in the D4 button clicked. So technically the couple of people who tried to watch the video still had this, but they didn't have the context of the explanation. So right here we have the handler. So this last guy is this is a parameter. So it's expecting a title, a style for this alert, and then the handler for this alert. And this is the actual closure. That guy right there. That is, it's a block containing no parameters that returns a void in, and we can say this is the body that does nothing in this example. So this is a fairly wasteful closure, but required a closure. So we passed in a closure and said, do nothing. And understand that this handler will actually do something here real quick just to kind of show this. So when I run this code, I'm going to go ahead and do a print consider it handled. All right. So now, upon us clicking that OK button, on the which will be part of the style cancel, it'll call this handler, passing nothing as a parameter, and ultimately it'll say consider it handled out to the console. So that's our way of doing something in response for them dismissing that alert or clicking one of the buttons in the alert and that kind of stuff. So there's our D4. When I hit OK, where's my print? Does stuff show up in there? Let's make sure stuff is showing up in there.
I think on the, I can't really see because your head is in the way.
Oh, do I need to do the this guy? No, not that guy.
Drag so we can see more of the right hand side. Okay, on the bottom.
Oh, this guy?
That guy.
There, consider it handled. Thank you. Did you pass the quiz? Oh, really? I was going to offer to give you free points. I wasn't actually going to say that until after you said you passed the quiz. I wasn't going to give it to him. After he said, I passed the quiz, then I was going to. So it was a meaningful offer. I don't think it's what I meant, but it's what I'm glad I said. All right. Does that make sense? How closures work? Okay. Did you get it right? So no? All right. So if we wanted to do something as a response for them clicking OK here, just so we can see what had actually happened. Since I didn't know how to console good. Oh, here, let's see. Sometimes we forget how to scheme. Sometimes I forget how to console. So nothing down there right now, but when I actually clicked away that alert, that's when the code for it being handled got called. That's when it called this function that I supplied it. Make sense?
Oh, that's what I mean by handler? Like,
yeah.
Handle them clicking it.
Correct. Yeah. Handle that event. Handle that event that, when they click the button, if because in this case we're using the style cancel, which I think different styles have handlers that have different parameters that it might take. So like the handler, when you have multiple buttons, might say which button they clicked. But this one is, like there's one button, you clicked it. What do you want to do in response to that? So, maybe you're dismissing a view controller or, writing something to a database somewhere, whatever it is. It's your opportunity to interject some logic, just like we've dealt with the segues and those guys. Okay, it's a point in time where we can do something. All right, so for your homework assignment, you were supposed to basically take this code and have it happen for every single one of our buttons, right? So realistically, what may have been a good idea is, let's take that. So we'll put the alert up here globally, but we should probably finish moving the alert up there. Okay, and then the message was ran for +1, so I can now just steal this code. That's 6. I'll fix the indentation here in a second. That's 8. That's 10. That's 12. That's 20. That's 100. And then I'm just going to highlight all that poorly indented stuff. Right click, go to structure and say reindent. So fixed all that. Okay, so now each of our buttons should now do something. So there's our D4, there's our D6, there's our D8. Here, we'll roll D8 a couple times just to make sure we eventually get something that's big roll, big roll. There we go. 7. There's our D10. There's our D12. Why is it rolling so low?
I think RAND is really
Yeah, because when you think about it, when you're doing the RAND, it's doing the RAND and then you're doing the module.
Yeah, so it's
more likely that you'll get one of those a lower value than a higher value.
Well, I don't know. That's not necessarily true. It should still be relatively uniform. Because when you do RAND, you're getting a number between 0 and, what did we say, 2 billion? And then you're modding it by, that number, 8. So, I mean, it should still be fairly, reasonably uniform. Or at least close enough for hand grenades.
Yeah.
But I get what you're saying. It might not be a perfect.
Yeah.
All right. So, in any case, this seems to be working. But what if we want it to work differently? All right, so right now we're kind of in the process of exploring our interface options. Now, if we were designing an app to work a certain way, would we design this app to be, to work like this? Well, given what we already knew, maybe. But we might say that if we had some more tools in our toolbox, we might choose to design this interface to work a little differently. Correct? All right, so what I'm going to do here, and we're going to actually do this as a separate screen so we can have kind of comparisons. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to throw in an extra button down at the bottom here that will traverse us to another screen. Okay, so we can use this second screen as our test bed for something else. We've already had 2 screen applications, right? We've done that already? Okay. So let's go to our interface storyboard. And I'll go ahead and we'll throw another interface controller out here. And then I'm going to throw a button at the bottom of our group here. Let's call this guy next, like that. And we'll control click that over here. Go ahead.
Why don't you just drag the interface controller to the next page, and when it loads up, you can just swipe it over. You don't even need to hit a button.
Drag who? Tell me what you want to do.
Go up to the top of that screen, do control click.
Oh, control click and bring that there.
Yeah.
So now you can swipe over to the next page.
You can swipe it.
Is that a good way to get there? That's what you want to do? You think that's legit?
Well, if it has the SIGU in your identifier, isn't it pretty much the exact same thing?
Yeah. Just the question is, do you want it to be a motion where you swipe, or do you want it to be a button you click? I'm not sure.
Space on the screen.
Okay. Fair enough. Reasonable enough solution. All right, so we're going to come on here, and we're going to create a group. Actually, we're going to have this. Yeah, I'm going to make the group anyways. So I'm going to create a group, and we're going to make this a vertical group. And now I'm going to do something called a table. So we're going to drag this table in here, which is going to give us a table row. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put one label in this table row for right now. And we'll go ahead and center that. Okay. Now, for right now, let's see, I want to click on the table. I think we can give ourselves some number. Say this again?
I just noticed it looked like you added a group once you added the label.
It does. A table row is a group. Yep. I just put it inside of my own group in case I wanted things
Right.
organized inside of that group, not inside the table.
Right.
Yeah, so here's a group governing our entire interface. In that group, we have a single element called a table. In that table, we have this single element called a table row controller, which we're going to use here in a few minutes. In fact, let's call this a cell. So I gave that guy a name. So when we click on that, we have a row controller identifier, this guy right here. And then inside that cell, we have a group, and inside that, and that group right now is set as horizontal, and then we have a single label in there. But pretty soon here, in fact, actually, let's just do it now. I'm going to put an image. All right, and we're going to, we say relative to the container, and we're going to say 0.33, should be good. And then this guy is going to be relative to the container. Actually, if I say size to fit, will that just squeeze the rest? No, that's stupid. And then 0.67 should be the rest. Okay, so now I have a little image and then a label. And does this just give me a little padding? Is that what that does? Oh, I guess, well, that's kind of cool. You can nudge it. That seems like it might be dangerous as soon as Apple decides to have 15 different watch face sizes. But whatever. Okay, so in any case, we have an image. Now let's go ahead and just grab some images real quick. So I'm going to do D20 dice. Let's get some images. Just want to grab a dice set. This would be good enough for what we're doing right here. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to get a single die. Perfect. All of our dice will look like this. Save image as D20. Put that in downloads. Now I'm going to go ahead and add an image to our project here. So I'm going to come up here to our, I'm going to put it as part of our WatchKit app. Okay, so images actually need to be part of the project that you're working on. So I'm going to create a new, I like to put them inside of a group. So a group is like a little folder. I'm just going to call this guy images. And I'm going to right click on images. I'm going to say add files to Dice Roller. And I'm going to go to my downloads. And I'm going to find my D20 JPEG. And make sure that you select this checkbox here that says copy items if needed. Just want to make sure I was recording this time. If you don't do that, moving your project from computer to computer breaks, because what ends up happening is, let's say you had a bunch of images on your desktop in your downloads folder, it creates a link to that image rather than bringing the image into your project. Okay, so make sure you copy this. All right, and then you could say which targets you want to add it to. And so if I want it to be on all of my different targets, I can click it on all of them. But right now we're going to have it on our WatchKit app. Actually, is it the app or it's the app. Okay, so there's that guy. Now I should be able to come in here for the image, and I should be able to choose the D20 image as a possible starting image. And let's now do this. I don't want it to scale to fill like that. Can I? Huh? That's weird. Did my image not end up inside that group? It's a horizontal group.
I did relative to container and it resized it to show the entire dice. On it, under size, it has a width, which we did in the height.
Oh, for this guy.
Yeah, for the actual image.
I gotcha. Yep. So size to fit.
Well, that was the width, but yeah, width. There's also one for height.
Oh, the height was already set to that. But yeah, I get it. All right. Well, so in any case, we have our dice in there now. Okay. So right now we have one row that's in here, but we want to understand how table views work. So what we need to do is we need to create an object now in our code that governs our table view rows. Okay, an object that governs this. So if we look at Apple's documentation for this, what we've just done, so we have this thing called a row controller. All right, so we're going to create this new class, and it's going to be just an NS object. All right, and then we're going to start connecting stuff up. So from our perspective, nothing's going to change, but let's go ahead and make this class. So come in here. Let's see, we're going to do it inside of our extension, or we want to do it inside of whatever. So I'm going to say new file. It's going to be a Cocoa Touch class. Actually, let's just go under I guess we're going to say WatchKit class. We're going to have it inherit from NS object. So this guy's going to be a subclass of NS object. And let's call it dice row. Yeah, let's call it dice row. Next, we're adding it to, see, this is where it gets a little weird. We want it for the extension or the app? I need to figure out what's the difference between these. We'll leave it in the extension right now since that's what these guys are. It might be that the extension extends the app itself. There might be a reason for the two of them, but I don't know that it makes a huge difference for us right this second. All right, so I've created this class called a dice row. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come out here to our storyboard, and just like we've done for our interfaces here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on, inside this group, let's click on the table, let's click on the cell. I want this cell to be a member not of NSObject, but a member of, what's it called, row, dice row. It's called dice row. Member of dice row. So this guy's not a generic object, he's actually a dice row. Make sense? What that means is now what I can do is I can go ahead and, as long as I click on this cell here, I can go ahead and click on my share. Except that's not where I expected it to go. I expected it to give me my dice row. I'm going to go ahead and control click. So we have an outlet for our image. Call this guy the image. And then we'll control click. So we have an outlet for our label. All right, so now we have outlets for both of those guys. Let's go ahead and close that dude. All right, so now we want to actually hook that up and display stuff inside of our interface. Because right now we've essentially created kind of a prototype for a table. Building out a row, and each row is going to have a single label and a single image in it. We've backed that row with the idea of a NSObject for that guy. Now we need to go ahead and give a code behind for this interface controller. So let's call this page 2. So we'll create a new file. It's going to be a WatchKit class. This guy is going to be an interface controller. And actually, let's call this table example IC for interface controller. Go ahead and create that. Go out to our storyboard, make sure that we let this guy know that he's one of those animals now, not one of the default. So here is our table example IC. He's one of those dudes now. Okay, so now what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to create an array of values that we're ultimately going to want to fill our labels with. Okay, so for us it's going to be D4, D6, D8, D10, D12, D20, D100. Okay, so let's go ahead and come into our page 2. Where's page 2? Oh, I didn't call it page 2, I called it this. Sample thing. Okay. And we're going to go ahead and under awake with context, we'll go ahead and create our array. So we're going to say let label names be equal to D4, comma, D6, D8, D10, D12, D20, D100. All right, so we have a bunch of label names. Now we want to go ahead and fill up our table. What's this guy upset about? Oh, it's just because we haven't used it yet. Thank you. All right, so let's go ahead and give ourselves access to that table inside of our code so we can actually fill it. So we'll go back to our storyboard. Click here. Here's the actual table. So let's go ahead and do the share thing here. We'll do control click. We're going to give ourselves that outlet. This guy's going to be a WK interface table. So let's call this guy the table. All right, so we have access to that guy now. Go back into our code. So now we're going to fill up our table contents. So here's our example. So we have to tell our table how many rows it has and then what the row type is. So let's steal this and we'll modify it. So before we do anything else, we're going to say, except for us, it's not self.table, it's self.theTable. We're going to set its number of rows to be label names count. And then the row type, we called that guy a cell. Remember that when we gave the identifier for our row? What are you upset about? Number of rows is going to be label names dot count. Row type was cell. Oh, I was copying in Objective-C code. So we've bastardized that line now. All right. Yeah, this is all Objective-C code. Nice. All right, so using Objective-C as our example, it's fine. That probably has a flipper up there somewhere. It doesn't matter. So for us, we're going to go through and for each one of our rows, and we're going to create an instance of our row. Okay, so we'll have a row type. We'll ask the row controller for that instance because we told it, in our case, we have what? D4, D6, D8, D10, D12, D20, D100. We have 7. So by saying how many elements are going to be, it created 7 instances of our row for us. All right, so now we can go ahead and grab the current row, change values associated with it, for example, okay, and then update the row's description or whatever, the text that's in there, okay? So let's go ahead and do this. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to say for, and this guy is going to be, let's see, var row in self.theTable dot we have access to rows. Well, that gets us the row controller at index. Okay, looks like we have to do a normal loop. So var I is equal to 0, I is less than label names dot count, I plus plus. Each time through we want to go ahead and give ourselves a cell, so we'll say let cur cell, or cur row, let's call it cur row, equal self dot the table dot, is it row? Row controller at index, the index is going to be I, So that'll get us a current row, and it's probably going to yell at us that this guy's the wrong type or something. Oh, no, it's just the let thing. All right. Annoying or helpful? All right, so we have our current row, so we're going to go ahead and say cur row dot, what do I call it, the label? What do I call this guy? As a dice row. Yeah, I have something in there called the label. I might have to tell it it's a dice row. Cur row dot the label dot text. I know it's dot set text, right? Is equal to label names at bucket I. Okay, so we create a array that has all of our row texts in it. Then we let our table know how many rows it will have and the type that the row will be. So our type is from Interface Builder. We name that guy a cell. So this guy right here is a cell, and where we named that was over here under its class. I'm sorry, was right here under its identifier. We called it a cell. It's associated with class dice row. All right, so that's why we had to do both of these things over here. We said, here's how many rows it has. Each row is going to be one of these guys. So let's go through all those rows. Each time through, grab the current row. So we're going to ask our table for that current row. And we may not have had to cast it to a dice row, but this allowed us to do command completion down here. So by saying as exclamation point, I'm saying, trust me, this dude is of type dice row. That's what he is. Now I can go ahead and set my current rows label text equal to that label name. Make sense? All right, so let's go ahead and run this and see if we actually get a table with stuff in it. And I'm guessing it's option click to swipe. Oh, just click. Okay. So there's our table with all of our awesomeness in it. All right, now we'd like to be able to click on these individual guys here, right? But we need to have a function that will get called. There needs to be a callback that will get called for each of these. So let's go back to the documentation. We want to be able to handle row selections. So we're going to go ahead and grab this a function we can drop into our code. It's called did select row at index. And I actually grabbed the Swift one this time. And let's just do print selected row index. Just out of curiosity real quick, just make sure that builds just for our own benefit. I'm going to cut that. Now I'm going to say override func table. Okay, yeah, you can have it build it for you. So since we're dealing with tables here, we can just type in override func and then start with table, and it gives us this did select row at index, so it'll write it for us. So we don't have to go and copy and paste it from someplace. All right, so now whenever we click on one of those rows, it should call this callback function saying selected row. Selected row 0, selected row 1, selected row 2, so on and so forth. Make sense? And you should be able to scroll through these guys. All right, now let's go ahead and have it roll the correct number of things. So we're going to go and steal a little bit of our code from our first screen. Namely, we're going to grab our alert. We'll paste that into our table example. Very top. So I've made that guy a global so we can just use it over and over again. And then we'll go ahead and steal one of our presenting the alerts and then modify that to make it work for what's going on here. So we'll scroll down to the did select. Okay, so now we need to roll a certain number of sides depending on what thing was clicked. Index 0 should be 4 sides, index 1 should be 6 sides, so on and so forth, right? So what I'm going to do is up top here, I'm going to create an array, let sides be equal to 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 20, 100, like that. Okay, so I gave myself a global array. Then down here, instead of modding by 4, I'll mod it by self dot, what do I call it, sides at bucket row index. Oh, of course. So can we just do... That's an int 32, so I need these guys to be int 32s. So it was complaining that this guy was technically a 32-bit integer and this guy was only an integer. So we had to pass that int into the constructor for int 32 to build an int 32 integer. So now he's happy that they're the same kind of animal. Okay, so now no matter what button we click on, it'll grab the right number of sides, do the roll, present the alert, so on and so forth. Run that. So there's a D4, there's a D8. D100, so on and so forth. Okay. Now, what if we want to have a different picture? So let me we'll call it D12 dice. Well, I guess for our example, it doesn't really matter. So with that in mind, I'm just going to use Qbert. I don't have a good picture of Qbert here. I guess this one's okay. So save image as, oh yeah, this one will actually be perfect. So imagine that you might have more than one dice type. I'll go ahead and add to my images. And you can actually drag them in here. I just like doing it this way so you don't screw things up. And I'm going to add from our downloads, Qbert. Make sure the copy items if needed is there. Add it. All right. Now what I'm going to do is as we are creating these rows, so up here in Awake with Context, we're going through and we're actually generating our rows here. So every other row, so that is the even, let's say the even-sided rows. I'm going to say, so if I mod 2 is equal to 0, let's change the image to Qbert. Okay, so we'll say cur row dot the image dot set image, and this guy is going to be a UI image, and then created with I think this is the one we want, the one just named, and the name of this guy is Qbert.png, like that. All right, so let's see if we nailed that. Now, I've never used this function before, so one thing I want you to kind of see from what I did there is I kind of let it grow. I said, you know, set image, and then what are my options for setting the image? And it gave me 15 options, and I said, okay, which one looks like it's the most legit? So I'm hoping that this one allows me to just name an image there, and it looks in the local bundle for an image name that. All right, otherwise things could get a little bit creepier, but I think this is going to work. I have a decent feeling about it. All right, well, it didn't not work. Well, I guess it didn't not. What? Is that a didn't not work? That would mean it did work. Yeah, it didn't do that. Definitely overwrote it with something. All right, so let's see here. So we need to build this guy. It is called Qbert.png. Let me use a different version of this constructor. UI image, contents of file, Qbert.png. All right, let's try that. That didn't work either. Please tell me I don't have to like give it the full path of where the thing is in the bundle. It's like the worst parts of the Bible. Row icon, set image, data object. Oh, where's data object? Where did he create his data objects? Or you just omit that part? It's an exercise for the reader. Let me do something here real quick. So it's an image. Image. And set image. Let's see if it's not actually a UI image. Set image. Oh, image named? Try that one. Qbert.png. Big money, big money, big money. Ha-ha! Now you can complete your assignment. All right, so final thing there was to set the image. You just call the WK image, his set image named function, and just pass that the name of your image. So for your homework, create the second screen, or you can redo your first screen, whatever you want. I don't care. We're going to keep evolving this. But make it so that you have a table view like we have here. You should have appropriate dice for each of the different sided die. You can pick whatever you want for those, but they should probably look like dice. And then have the right things, and then mess around with having it actually call the did select road index. Make sense? All right, so that is for Wednesday, and I did record this lecture. So